show you what I've marked as Exhibit A57. And Nicole, could you please identify what's being shown on A57, which I assume you prepared as well, is that correct?
Yes, I prepared this exhibit, which over an aerial depicts locations considered for speed tables in accordance with Penndot's guidelines for distance from intersections and driveways and sight distance. So we have identified in this exhibit several potential locations that meet the criteria for speed tables, and have offered, in coordination with the township, to select 2 locations to install speed tables.
Okay, so you're not proposing to install speed tables in the yellow boxes all over the place, is that correct?
That is correct. It would not be appropriate to have too many speed tables. That could impact emergency vehicle operations, but simply the yellow boxes depict where speed tables could be located and satisfy the criteria. And so within those yellow boxes, we would recommend and have offered on behalf of the applicant to install at 2 locations. Okay,
and the exhibit also depicts some purple lines running perpendicular to West Pleasant Grove Road. What do those represent?
Those represent where the site accesses will be on the south side of West Pleasant Grove Road, and simply highlights where some existing intersections are as well, as one of the criteria is spacing.
Okay. In your opinion, and based upon your analysis, is traffic calming required along West Pleasant Grove Road?
No, based on our assessment and analysis, we did not see any indication that traffic calming is required.
Why not?
It's a narrow roadway, and the travel speeds, the number of intersections, the fact that it is a relatively short distance between 202 and New Street, where the traffic is automatically calmed with the roadway ending. There was no indication, and also we've heard from some of the residents at various planning commission meetings, so far as some of them indicated they did not want to see the roadway widened, and did not experience the conditions that would require traffic calming.
Did you analyze the site distances at the West Pleasant Grove Road intersections with the proposed development?
Yes, I did, in coordination with the applicant's site engineer, Eastern States.
Okay, I'd like to show you what I've marked as exhibits A58, A, B, C, and D, and we'll go through them each individually. Starting with the first exhibit, Exhibit A58A, could you please tell the board what this depicts and what it shows in terms of site distances at the specific intersection?
Sure. At the top of the exhibit, it depicts the intersection of Street Road with the proposed collector road, and below correlates that horizontal design with the vertical design. So the vertical profile that runs along Street Road is depicted in the bottom half of the exhibit. And the indications of the sight lines are depicted over the vertical alignment of the roadway in that portion of the exhibit, demonstrating at this location that some reprofiling will be needed in conjunction with the improvements the applicant is providing along Street Road in order to ensure that the site distance requirements of Penndot at this location, since it's a state road, are provided.
So the applicant would have to do some road reprofiling in order to meet the minimum site distance, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and is the applicant committed to doing so?
Yes.
Okay. You can look at the next exhibit, Exhibit A58B. Okay, Nicole, again, the same thing. If you could please describe the specific roadway intersection and what needs to be done in order to achieve the required site distance.
Yes, this is the intersection of West Pleasant Grove Road and Site Access Road K. Same horizontal geometry shown at the top of the exhibit with the vertical information shown at the bottom. At this location, I will note, we are accounting for the widening that is required by the township along West Pleasant Grove Road, along the south side, to satisfy the township's criteria for collector road, which the applicant is providing widening for a 14-foot half width on the south side of the roadway along their frontage. That is provided for and accounted for within this exhibit to ensure that the ultimate setback of the vehicle is being accounted for exiting Road K in terms of what that sight line will look like. So based on the vertical profile and the sight lines, the minimum sight distance criteria is achieved at this location.
And that's after the road has been widened.
That is correct.
Okay. We can go to the next exhibit, Exhibit A58C, please. Okay, again, Nicole, for this intersection, please specify which intersection we're looking at and what needs to be done in order to achieve the required site distance.
This exhibit demonstrates the intersection of West Pleasant Grove Road with Site Access Road M. And similarly accommodates and accounts for the widening to be completed by the applicant along West Pleasant Grove Road when evaluating the vertical profile and the necessary sight lines. Based on this conceptual plan, the vertical profile with the widening accommodates and provides for the minimum site distance criteria.
Okay. And then the last one, Exhibit A58D, please. And again, Nicole, if you could please describe the road intersection that we're looking at and what needs to be done to achieve the required site distance.
This exhibit depicts the horizontal and vertical alignment at the intersection of West Pleasant Grove Road and the Collector Road, again with the widening that the applicant will provide along West Pleasant Grove Road, and with the vertical geometry counting for that widening, the minimum site distance requirements are achieved.
Greg, I don't have a copy of A58D. I don't know if it wasn't included, but can we just double check on that tomorrow to make sure that I can get that?
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you.
Nicole, you mentioned in your multiple of these responses that the West Pleasant Grove Road frontage would need to be wide. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, I'd like to show you what I've marked as Exhibit A59. And if you could please identify what this plan is depicting conceptually.
Yes, so this exhibit shows the extent of the entire West Pleasant Grove Road property frontage. and the widening that the applicant is required to complete in order to provide a half width along their property frontage of 14 feet for West Pleasant Grove Road in order to satisfy the township criteria for Collector Road, which is the designation the township has applied to West Pleasant Grove Road.
Okay, and what again is the required minimum width of a collector road in the township?
It is 28 feet in total.
Okay, and what is, or do you know what West Pleasant Grove Road's current right-of-way width is?
So the right-of-way width, I'd have to confirm based on a plan. What I can speak to is the existing cartway width at times is, 19 feet, but varies throughout the length.
Okay, and just so there's clarification as this plan, it looks like there's match lines. If you could just describe how that works, how you would look at it.
Yeah, so across the top of the page, all the way to the left, you see the intersection with South New Street and West Pleasant Grove Road. So as we travel from left to right, we are traveling east towards 202. We meet a match line on the right side. We drop down to the second area on the left. That's where the match lines up. And then we continue right across the page, which continues to take us east along West Pleasant Grove Road, again towards 202. We meet another match line. We drop down and go to the left of the page and continue eastbound through the Collector Road intersection, and ultimately further east would take you to 202.
Okay, and why does the widening stop where depicted down on that third area?
It stops at the end of the property line.
Okay, so that's no longer tolls frontage, is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. If we could go back to Exhibit A47, please. And Nicole, I believe I asked you this question in the first application, so I'll ask you again in the second application. Did you review the internal roadway design of the proposed development?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And do you have an opinion as to whether the design and layout of these internal streets is adequate and safe?
The design and layout of the internal streets is in keeping with industry standards and general engineering, transportation engineering guidelines, resulting in an adequate and safe design.
All right, I have no further questions for Ms. Kline.
Okay. I don't know if I said it or not earlier, but we're going to wrap up the hearing tonight around 9 o'clock. We'll see where we are in the questioning. What I'd like to do is to simply proceed with the lists of the parties as we have done in the past. Maintained a list, and we're just going to take them in the order that we have them, first with those with counsel and those without. Again, if we don't reach you this evening, don't worry, we will have Ms. Kline back on September 14th. Everyone will have the opportunity, the board will have the opportunity, and Mr. Edelman may in fact have some redirect for her once that's all done. So, with that in mind, why don't we turn to Ms. Camp on behalf of the Westtown Township Planning Commission for any questions.
Thank you. Will the applicants, whoever was sharing the screen, will they be able to pull up the exhibits if I have a question of Ms. Kline relating to an applicant exhibit?
As long as
absolutely.
as long as you tell them the exhibit number.
Thank you.
Sure. No, you're welcome.
Ms. Kline, Exhibit A42, that was the traffic impact study that was dated August 13th, 2019. And that was submitted with the conditional use application that's currently before the board. Was that report filed with Penndot?
Just confirming that so I can answer that question accurately. Yeah, it was submitted to Penndot.
Okay, and your counsel has marked Exhibit A46A and A46B as more recent iterations or modifications to the traffic impact study. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And have either of those reports been submitted to Penndot?
The December 2nd, 2019 study has been submitted in full to Penndot. The last revision did not address any comments from Penndot, only addressed comments from the township. And so as to focus on the township's comments, which had resulted in no changes to the analysis or recommendations, or simply requests to add some additional clarification, that has not been submitted to Penndot at this time. But the December 2nd, 2019 has, yes.
Okay, and as we're standing here tonight, Penndot has not issued any permits or approvals for any of the intersection improvements that you've shown on your plans or discussed this evening. Is that correct?
That is correct. No permits or approvals at this time.
Okay, and the traffic impact study, which was dated May 15th, 2020, it concludes that the proposed development will not impact the intersection of Route 202 and Route 926, correct?
Correct.
And part of this conclusion that you reached is due to anticipated diversion of traffic to the collector road, correct?
Correct.
If traffic was not diverted to the level that you conclude in your traffic impact study, would you expect that under post-development conditions, the intersection of Route 202 and 926 would not operate at the levels of service that you present in your TIS?
If there was a difference in the diversions assumed in the TIS versus reality, it certainly would change the analysis results, but the level of the results as currently depicted in the report, the diversions have been reviewed and approved by Penndot, reviewed and approved by the township traffic engineer in terms of going back and forth and resolving any outstanding comments. And I would note that the modifications and diversion in traffic would have to be almost nothing to result in any impact at the intersection. So that is the conditions as it currently stands.
Can you point me to where Penndot has specifically approved the diversion analysis that you use in your TIS?
So in their reviews, as well as through direct correspondence with Penndot, as documented in the emails submitted, they had no further outstanding comments on the traffic diversion assumptions.
And those would be the emails. I'm trying to find what they were marked.
Exhibit A49.
Okay, so you believe that in Exhibit A49, that is Penndot's approval of your conversion analysis?
Correct. And their latest review letter did not have any outstanding comments remaining in relation to the traffic diversions.
Okay, thank you. You state in your letter of July 29th, which was A45F, state that Penndot has approved the proposed future signal coordination at Route 926 and New Street. Where is that approval by Penndot stated?
So it is depicted in Exhibit A49, which is up on the screen now. We have an email from Dave Adams, the Penndot Signals section manager. We wanted to confirm with him as the township's traffic engineer questioned our assumptions for the operations of the signals along 926. And so we reached out to Penndot and we received correspondence from Dave Adams, as we've submitted here as in this exhibit, that indicates our assumptions in the traffic study is what Penndot is looking for.
So they will not require coordination with the traffic light at 202 and 926? Is that the takeaway from this exhibit?
No, we always proposed coordination. It was the means of coordination that was questioned by the township's traffic engineer. Our means of coordination was upheld and agreed upon by Penndot. So it was always to be coordinated. It was just a question of the means of coordination.
You would expect that the residential development of 317 new dwellings would also generate pedestrian traffic in addition to vehicular traffic, do you not?
If facilities are provided, yes.
And does your TIS estimate the level of pedestrian traffic from the development?
It does not. The traffic impact study, in order to conservatively assess PennDOT's traffic impact and mitigation criteria, which is solely demonstrated through vehicular traffic, we did not take any reductions for pedestrian traffic. That would have resulted in less vehicular trip generation, which we could have proposed. But since the traffic impact study is a measure of vehicular impact, we did not take any pedestrian reductions in those assumptions.
Yeah, I wasn't asking that question in terms of how it would reduce traffic. I'm pointing out that hasn't PennDOT repeatedly commented that you must analyze how the development is designed to accommodate pedestrians?
They have commented in the request for pedestrian connections, which have been proposed by the applicant.
And ultimately, will those pedestrian connections, if they lead to a PennDOT intersection, will they have to be approved by PennDOT?
Yes, they will. If there are any accommodations connecting to or within the state right-of-way, they will fall within the highway occupancy permit review and approval process.
In your TIS and also in your testimony this evening, you state that the intersection of West Pleasant Grove and the connector road operate with acceptable levels of service and they function in a safe manner with just stop-controlled intersections. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And however, PennDOT in its memo dated October 11th, 2019, which was marked Exhibit A44A, and also in PennDOT's memo dated December 30th, 2019, Exhibit A44B, PennDOT has indicated that they want the applicant to provide side-by-side eastbound and westbound left turn lanes at this intersection. Did they not?
They did comment on that at that time, yes.
And as a result of that comment, as well as comments from the Township traffic engineer, Al Federico, you did agree and told did provide a sketch plan for a roundabout, both a partial roundabout and a full roundabout, correct?
There was not a partial roundabout, there was a mini roundabout, and there was a full-size single-lane roundabout.
Excuse me, mini roundabout.
Mm-hmm.
You would agree with me that either of those two designs, whether it be the mini roundabout or the full roundabout, would provide a safer intersection, correct?
Based on research data, it would be expected to have a reduction in the crashes predicted at a mini roundabout or a roundabout versus a stop-controlled intersection. That is accurate.
And you attended the many planning commission meetings where the planning commission considered this intersection and the mini roundabout, full roundabout, and all traffic issues, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And is it a correct statement to say that the planning commission really supported the full roundabout plan that has been marked as Exhibit A55?
It was clear that the planning commission supported the full roundabout plan.
The mini roundabout design you testified tonight would require larger vehicles such as school buses and some larger trucks. They would not be able to navigate the paved portion of the roundabout and they would have to mount onto the curb. Is that correct?
The entire surface is paved and paved in such a way that it is the intent for large vehicles to traverse over the central island within the mini roundabout design. That is its intended design.
You conclude in your July 29th letter that only 2% of the traffic would be buses and large vehicles that would use this roundabout. Was this calculation done before Westchester Area School District buses were rerouted to use Orvis Way?
Yes, that is based on counts that were previous to Orvis Way being open to traffic.
So, assuming we would ever go back to school and we would have Orvis Way be opened, could that number then be higher as far as the percentage of buses and larger vehicles using that intersection at a roundabout?
It could be, and as I testified to earlier, there could be a significant increase in those larger vehicles, and it would still be well within the operational parameters acceptable at a mini roundabout.
The full roundabout plan, which is Exhibit A55, that would completely avoid the issue of buses and trucks not being able to stay within, the paved circle. Is that correct?
The intended design of a mini roundabout is for larger vehicles to traverse the central island. The intended design of a full-size single-lane roundabout is that the central island is not traversable by any vehicles. There is a truck apron, which is depicted in our exhibit, which is still outside of the paved way for passenger vehicles. So there is still a similar design in that there is paved area that is for use of larger vehicles and not for use of passenger vehicles.
But in a perfect world, if you were to design the safest intersection using a roundabout at this location, forget about property acquisition, forget about environmental constraints. In a perfect world, wouldn't the full roundabout plan present the safest means to design this intersection?
There is no indication that a traditional full-size roundabout is safer than a mini roundabout.
Isn't it correct that the full roundabout does not require acquisition of right-of-way or property from any other property, other than the development property?
It does not, as depicted in the exhibit, correct.
Would you agree that using a roundabout, whether it's the mini roundabout or the full roundabout, that would be a better design to accommodate pedestrians that may want to walk from this development to the schools located to the north?
Pedestrian facilities can be provided in a safe manner at a stop-controlled intersection as proposed in the conditional use plans.
That wasn't my question. Would a roundabout provide a safer design for pedestrian connectivity to the schools from this development?
If pedestrian accommodations were provided at the stop-controlled intersections to ensure that pedestrians are visible to drivers, there's no data that would support that a roundabout would be safer than an appropriately designed pedestrian facilities at a stop-controlled intersection.
The church property, which abuts the development property, has an exit-only driveway approximately 100 feet from the proposed connector road. Did you consider potential conflicting vehicular movements during peak periods of the church coming out of that driveway?
We did not study the peak church times, which would generally be on Sundays, when traffic at the collector road would be much lower than what is analyzed in the study as the weekday commuter peak periods.
You stated in your July 29th letter that toll is agreeable to a future connection from the church to the connector road. Will toll cooperate with the church to design the safest access from the church to the connector road to mitigate potential conflicts?
Toll has committed to provide for that connection, and it would, be at a location that is sufficient distance from West Pleasant Grove Road, which would be the most important factor for locating, one of the most important factors for locating that connection. But what is also important is intersections along the collector road for the development to ensure that vehicular conflicts are reduced. Aligning opposite a proposed intersection within the development plan would be ideal to reduce vehicle conflicts along the collector road.
So that's something that toll could explore with the church owners or representatives during land development. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Another comment that Al Federico, Township Traffic Engineer, commented upon in his reviews is he'd like to see the plan show provision for bus stops. You indicated in your response letter of July 29th that the Township Code does not require you to show bus stops, but wouldn't you agree that in order to provide safe roads for pedestrians that you need to have some bus stops in key locations?
So it would certainly be a benefit to provide bus stops at key locations. And although it's not required by the township ordinance, the applicant has spoken previously that during land development, they would work with the township to provide those locations.
Okay. You had shown speed tables on Exhibit A57, and this is the first time I heard tonight that the applicant is willing to install speed tables on West Pleasant Grove in 2 locations as determined appropriate or suitable by the board during land development. Is that correct?
That is correct, as we indicated at planning commission meetings, but if it was not clear, that is the indication of the applicant, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
You brought tonight a series of exhibits that are marked A58A through D. And I just want to be clear about what these exhibits show. Your testimony was that these exhibits show the necessary regrading necessary to provide the acceptable site distance at the various intersections that are shown on those plans. Is that correct?
So I think more accurately, they depict the existing vertical profile or the vertical profile in the case of West Pleasant Grove Road with the widening. This is directly in response to one of the township traffic engineer's comments. On behalf of the applicant, we have indicated that minimum site distance criteria will be achieved at all locations, but he wanted further confirmation since roadway improvements will be completed at these locations. So these exhibits have been prepared, to depict the roadway improvements proposed by the applicant at all access and collector road intersections to demonstrate what the vertical profiles are at those locations. And based on this analysis, there is some reprofiling necessary only along 926 to ensure that minimum site distance criteria is achieved and the applicant is committed to providing those improvements.
But would you agree with me that the latest plan, marked Exhibit A47, does not currently show the necessary regrading in order to achieve the acceptable site distances that you referenced in your TIS?
It is only these exhibits that demonstrate the changes in the vertical profile necessary. That is my understanding, but I did not prepare those plans. Those were prepared by ESE.
So would applicant then agree that exhibits A58A through D would have to, again, assuming the township traffic engineer agreed with what these represent and show, that they would then have to make their way onto the conditional use plan and or the land development plan to be able to, for applicant to be able to provide the acceptable site distances at these.
I'm going to object to that question as to what the applicant would agree to with respect to the plan sheets. They show what they show. I don't understand the relevance of the question, let alone whether Nicole is qualified or been offered for those types of answers.
Well, she's offered testimony and also a traffic impact study that identifies what are acceptable site distances. And I'm asking her, does the applicant need to implement what's shown on these plans, A58A through D, in order to meet those site distances she references in the TP?
She did not offer any testimony with respect to what's required on the site plan. So it's beyond the scope of her testimony.
I didn't ask her what's on the site plan. I asked her if,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Chris.
In order to meet the acceptable site distances that she references on pages 12 and 13 of the traffic impact study in table 4, she lists specific numbers as to what the acceptable site distances must be. Is she stating that these plans show what has to happen as far as road profiling and grading in order to meet those site distances? That's my question.
Nicole, okay, Nicole, you can answer that question.
Yes, this exhibit that is being shown now and it is exhibit 58A through D shows what is necessary to achieve the site distances required.
And you agree that providing a clear site at an intersection is necessary in order for the intersection to be safe and to avoid a traffic hazard, correct?
It is a requirement, correct.
1 minute, please. So as it sits today, do you know if Exhibit A47, which is the site plan, does it show what is needed as far as grading and road profiling in order to meet the site distances you reference in your TIS?
I did not prepare the site plans, and to that level of detail, I cannot answer that question.
Okay. Do you do any analysis to determine whether or not the regrading or the reprofiling that's shown on exhibits A58A through D can all be accomplished within land, either within an existing right-of-way or development property controlled by toll?
Based on the assessment to compile exhibits A58A through D, any reprofiling needed can be accommodated within existing right-of-way or within property controlled by the applicant, yes.
Exhibits A58A, I'm sorry, A58B, Road K and West Pleasant Grove Road. You would agree with me that this requires significant cut and fill in order to achieve the acceptable site distance, correct?
I am not responsible for the preparation of the site plans or cut and fill calculations or alignments, so I cannot answer that question.
Exhibit A58D, that's the Collector Road and 926. So specifically on this plan, you're confident that the extent of regrading necessary to achieve adequate site distance is confined to applicant's land and the right-of-way of the road?
So just to clarify, the exhibit that you asked for was 58D, which is